A. Wallis Budge's The Dwellers on the Nile, The Life, History, Religion, and Literature of the Ancient Egyptians. We are continuing Chapter 1, The Mother, the Family, the Home, and the School. When in the course of centuries, funerary murders became too expensive or unpopular, the figure of a naked woman made of wood or terracotta or painted on wood or papyrus was buried with the deceased, so that the spirit of the woman that would be evoked from it became the Heka, or the word of power, might comfort him in the world beyond the grave. Sometimes the figure of or model of the naked woman is represented as lying on a bed with the child by her side, the child symbolizing the offspring that the woman would bear to her husband in the land of the dead. Examples of such figures may be seen in the British Museum. Now, although polygamy existed in Egypt in all periods, the Egyptians well understood the moral and material advantages that accrued to the man who loved and honored his wife and was faithful to her. Well, polygamy is all about being honorable and faithful to any woman you cohort with. Ptah-hotep, the sage, said, "If thou wouldst be wise or prosperous, establish a house for thyself." Get married. "Love thou thy wife, and the house wholly and rightly. Fill her belly and clothe her back. Oil for anointing is the medicine for her limbs. Make her heart to rejoice as long as thou livest. She's a field profitable to her lord." Lowercase l, lady, lord, that sort of thing. "Enter not into disputes with her. She will withdraw herself before violence. Make her to prosper permanently in thy house. If thou art hostile to her, she will become like a ditch." And about 1500 years later, the scribe Annie said, "Attempt not to direct a married woman in her house, when thou knowest that she is an excellent housewife. Say not to her, 'Where is that thing? Bring it to me,' when she has set it in its proper place. Watch her with thine eye, and hold thy peace, and then thou wilt be able to appreciate her wise and prudent management. Happy wilt thou be if thou goest hand in hand with her." Many are the men who do not understand this. The man who interferes in his house only stirs up confusion in it, and never finds that he is the real master thereof in all matters. And the sages were never tired of expressing upon men, both married and single, the folly and the danger incurred in running after the strange woman and the woman in the houses of neighbors. Ptah-hotep says, "If thou wishest to maintain a permanent friendship in the house to which thou art in the habit of going, whether as a master, or whether as a brother, or whether as a friend, or, in fact, in any place to which thou hast the entry, strive against associating with the women there. The place which they frequent is not good for thee, but the imprudent man follows them. 1,000 men have been destroyed by them in their quest of what is beautiful. A man is made a fool of by their dazzling limbs, which turn into things that are harder than quartzite sandstone. The pleasure lasts only for a brief moment, and it is even as a dream, and when it is ended, a man finds death through having experienced it. And Annie the scribe says, 'Guard thyself well against the strange woman who is not known in her quarter of the town. Cast not longing glances after her, as do those who are like unto her, and have no intercourse with her of any sort or kind whatsoever. She is a deep ditch, and where her currents will lead no man knows. When a woman whose husband is absent from her charms, and beckons thee to her each day, and says that there is none present to bear witness, and arranges her net to snare thee therein, it is a most abominable deed, which merits the penalty of death for a man to hearken to her, even if she does not succeed in her object. Nevertheless, men commit abominable deeds in order to gratify a passion of this kind. For the unfaithful husband, Egyptian law had no penalty, and the wronged wife presumably had no redress. But for the unfaithful wife, the case was entirely different, and 2 instances are known in which she suffered the penalty of death. Now, so both the adulterers in that case, but under Islamic law and Jewish law and under Christian law and Jewish law, the adulterer is put to death, whether male or female. In Islamic law, we have what Surah 24 says, which does not indicate putting anybody to death for consensual adultery. But there's no such thing in Islam where the men and women get different penalties, although the woman could be said to get less of a penalty because she could get, rather than, they try to figure out, okay, is she pregnant? Okay, let her give birth and perhaps nurse the child a little bit, and then carry out the execution or whatever penalty, to preserve the life of the kid. So under the Old Kingdom, the guilty wife was burnt alive and her ashes were scattered. Now, burning people alive was never a penalty under Islamic law, but Christian and Jewish did do that. And under the New Kingdom, Anpu killed his wife, cut up her body, and fed the dogs or jackals with the pieces. In the first instance, the paramour was thrown into the Nile, and a crocodile devoured him. A father claimed implicit obedience from his son, but the Egyptians thought a boy owed more to his mother than to his father, and it was therefore his duty not only to obey her, but to love her and give her constant proof of his devotion to her. The scribe Annie especially exhorts his son, Kensuhetep, to cherish his mother, and though his book of precepts belongs to a comparatively late period, his admonition on the subject of the son's duty to his mother so well illustrates the general feeling about it in an ancient Egyptian that the paragraph may be quoted in full. Annie says, "Multiply the bread cakes which thou givest to thy mother, and carry her as she carried thee. When thou wast a heavy load, she carried thee often, leaving me nothing to do for thee. When she had brought thee forth, after thy months were fulfilled, she set thee like a veritable yoke upon her neck, and her breasts were in thy mouth for 3 years. Though, whilst thou wert a babe, her tax as a nurse was loathsome. She felt no disgust at thee, saying, Consider what I have to do. And afterwards, when she had placed thee in the house of instruction, and while thou wast being taught thy letters, she came to thee there day by day, regularly and unfailingly, with bread cakes and beer from her house." Yes, they gave children beer. "When thou art a young man, and dost marry a wife, and art master and possessor of a house, I pray thee to consider thine own childhood, and how thou wast reared, and to do for the child that shall be born to thee everything that thy mother did for thee. Let it not happen that she shall have cause to blame thee, and give her not occasion to lift up her hands to God, and let it not be necessary for him to hear her supplications." And, so the weaning period differed in some cultures. So that text from the Tale of Two Brothers, his elder brother went to his house with his hand clasping the top of his head, and he smeared himself with mud. Then he went into the house and slew his wife, and cast her forth to the jackals. So that's the story of Anpu here. So what is this? Yitzaif Sun Ahri Shmi Nuf Rapif Pri U Datief Xhri Shkracha Dapgith Youth were Hu Na Wanu Dumt Ete Pu Irnth Pa. Oh, maybe that's right. Reef. Pre. Youth. Re. Chibusa. Taif. Humped. Youth. Hri. Khaya. Sut. Na. Nawun. Wahiya. Okay, I didn't say that too easy, but wanted to give you the idea what was going on with how to read that. Annie thought that God would hear a mother's complaint against an unkind or dutiful son, and he would punish the offender. Islam also, for example, holds there's a stronger duty to the mother. The wife, while awaiting the birth of her child, wore amulets of various kinds to protect her and her unborn babe from the attacks of the evil spirits that were held to be hostile to expectant mothers, and recited incantations in order to obtain the help of the benevolent entity considered to be a goddess who resided over childbirth. Two of these entities were believed to dwell in a special kind of stone, and 2 tablets made of this stone were laid down on the spot where it was arranged that the birth of the child should take place. And, they did the birth standing up, sitting up. Some cultures standing up. And it turns out that aids with the giving birth. But the Hebrew women also used such tablets as we see from the passage in Exodus 1:16, where they are called Habnim. Literally, the 2 stone tablets. When the son of a king was born, several of the old entities, males and females considered to be goddesses, some would say demon and demonesses, were believed to come into the birth chamber to protect the child, and among these were Heket, or Hakit, the frog demoness, Taurit, the hippopotamus demoness, and the very ancient demon Bes. Both Hakit and Taurit were demonesses of fertility and birth, and Bes was supposed to disarm by his jests and drolleries and laughter, lest the harmful of the evil spirits, and to attack with his sword and put to fight the demons who would injure the mother or her child. Now, we will find out more about Bes when I do my Egyptian political for 1442. Women who belonged to the industrial classes and peasant women relied for protection upon the pictures or figures of these entities that were kept in their houses. The birth of a son was followed by great rejoicings in the house, and the warm congratulations on the part of the neighbors. Births of daughters then as now, were not specially welcomed. Usually the mother suckled her child. And devoted herself to him, or her, for about 3 years. In rich men's houses, nurses were often employed, and these frequently obtained great influence and power. Whether any ceremonial washing of the child took place after its birth, as was customary among African tribes, is not known, and no religious ceremony seems to have accompanied the naming of the child. The evidence of the inscriptions shows that the Egyptians in general did not cultivate pride of family, and the perpetuation of family names and the prominent men of each generation seems to have been in contact to proclaim his own exploits and merits, and to allow those of his ancestors to fall into oblivion. Only here and there is an instance found in the text in which a man refers with pride to the generations of his ancestors, and the few genealogies of great officials and others known to us were compiled during the latter period of Egyptian history. In the use of formal names, the Egyptians were somewhat careless, for some names were common to men and women, and a man might have 2 wives, each having the same name, or 2 or 3 sons with the same name, or 2 or 3 daughters with the same name. Well, particularly more noble you are, was like the 3rd, the 4th of, In very early times, names were short and simple, and nicknames and diminutives of them, and pet names were common. The formal name of a man was called his great name, and the name by which he was known in everyday life, his beautiful name, and besides these he might have a nickname. On the other hand, it is doubtful if people in the lower classes had formal names at all. A boy might be given the name of his grandfather or uncle because he was supposed to resemble him, and a girl was often called Nefert because she was pretty or good, or Mosherau, little cat, i.e. pussy, because of her wielding and coaxing ways. A child who was supposed to be sent as a special favor to its parents by Ra or Ptah or Horus would be called Petra or Petptah or Ptar, i.e. gift of Ra, gift of Ptah, or gift of Horus. Or he might be called the son of a god or goddess, Sa Menthu, son of Menthu, or Sa Ast, son of Isis, and so on. Some of these names indicated that the possessors were begotten by such entities. Ramatsu, Ra begot him, and in many cases, Masu, Moses, that's where we get that name kind of derives from, although Musha is keeper of the sheep. In many cases, the names of entities and the names of demons and demonesses, those called gods and goddesses, were given to children, and we find men called Horus, Kensu, Thoth, etc., and women called Isis, Hathor, Sekhmet, etc. The names bestowed upon children often had a definitely religious meaning and signified the adherence of their possessors to the cults of the entities whose names they bore. While sometimes you have God divided into various, like people thinking in different personages. So it's not all demons and demonesses. Some are angels, some are, Sometimes the great name of a man formed a complete sentence. Jet Ptah auf Anx. Ptah spake. He lived. Many of the names of this class somewhat resemble the names borne by some of Cromwell's soldiers. Religious Egyptians often made the name of some entity a part of their names, and loyal officials and others made the name of the reigning king a part of their names. Among the names of the Egyptian kings and persons referred to in the Bible may be mentioned.